God is good. Freedom throughout the nation starts right here. What you take away, how you implement it, starts right here, and it starts with you. We changed this conference up a little bit so you could have that's a pretty good testimony, huh? Man, that's powerful. And we develop relationships as we go. We're voters, we're citizens, we're granddads, we're friends and brothers and sisters. Carry that message back to your community. Tell them what you heard today. It's a great pleasure and an honor to introduce another great veteran and a freedom fighter for this country, State Representative Tony Tinderholt.
I'm not as cool as he is. I have to write notes so I don't get lost. You know, I'm humbled and honored to be in the presence of such great people. That story is amazing. That's about the fourth or fifth time I've heard that story. Can you guys hear me okay in the back? It's about the fourth or fifth time I've heard that story, and you know, the only word that comes to mind to me every time I hear that story is faith and, you know, a true American hero. That guy's amazing. And to be around somebody like that and be able to speak after them and then be amongst a group like this, I was making a bunch of notes trying to think of what the average person sees when they look at you guys riding down the road. And you know, they usually think tough guy or tough gal or intimidating. I look out amongst you and I see something different. I see conservative veterans. I see camaraderie, esprit de corps of your group. I see all the things that make police departments, fire departments, military forces. Oh, by the way, we just happen to have been a part of the most powerful, best equipped, best trained fighting force on the face of the earth. Give yourselves a round of applause for that. And what you guys do is you bring that home to your community. You bring that back to your group. And so when you guys are driving down the road and my wife is like, wow, man, those guys look like tough guys. I have a different thought. I see those things that I just told you. I see veterans. I see teamwork. I see all those things that can help you influence your community, your city, and your state, and your federal government. I'm going to talk a little bit about where I came from, and what I did, and why I'm where I'm at today. And I'll wrap it up with talking about how you can influence and affect change, not as an individual person, but as a group of people that want to make a difference, just like when you were in the military, just like the organization you're in. You know, I've ridden motorcycles since about 1989. I was trying to think how far back, and I remember I had this little 250 Kawasaki piece of crap in Monterey, California, when I was in language school in the Air Force. And I quickly wanted to jump up to a crotch rocket, which I did, and it only took me about 3 months to wreck that thing. And you know, some of the things that are important to you are important to me too. I still ride. I don't have a cool Harley. I've got one of those, I'm almost embarrassed to tell you. So
It's got two wheels.
It's got three. Let me tell you why. I need training wheels. No, I was injured, and I don't have all of my strength and agility and balance still. And I wanted a motorcycle again. There's just something about feeling that wind in your face. It's like the feeling of freedom. I can't explain it. You guys get it. And I had to have another motorcycle, and you know, I really can't do two wheels like I used to. So I went and got three. One of those Can-Am Spyders with the radio and all the cool stuff. And I try to talk my wife into coming out on my bike every once in a while. And I've had it, I guess, close to a year now, and she's been on it twice. But maybe that makes me look more cool when I don't have her on it. I don't know. All right, so I joined the military when I was 17 years old. Grew up in Iowa, small town, 35,000 people. Had never been out of that city. And I joined the military because I hated school. I didn't want anything to do. People were talking about college, and I was like, look, number one, my family can't afford it. Number two, I'm done. I don't want to do any of the school stuff. And so it's probably a good time to tell you that I grew up in a very Democrat family, and I'm the only Republican in my family. And over the course of the last 13 or 14 months, they've all converted because I showed them the way to righteousness. But I joined the Air Force and I became a Spanish linguist. I did a lot of counter-drug operations down in South and Central America. I collected intelligence on Cuba and Nicaragua and El Salvador when they were having their little spats down there in the late 90s. Did the Panama invasion in '89. I love the military. I loved what it was. I miss it. I had you guys. How many of you guys? Just by a raise of hands, how many people are veterans in here? Awesome. So you'll understand. I get to my first unit. I've done nothing but go to school for a whole year. Language school, intelligence school, SEER school. That school was not much fun. And I get to my first military base, and my supervisor says, all right, so when are you going to start college? And I'm like, never, because that's why I came in the military, so I don't have to do that crap. Make a long story short, it was a short discussion with the sergeant. I was quickly enrolled in school. Luckily for me, I finished my bachelor's degree while I was in the Air Force. At 10 years, I thought I wanted to go see what life was like. I was 27 years old, had kids, was married, and had been all over South and Central America, getting rid of drug labs, working the border. I wanted to see what civilian life was like. So I did. I went out and was a consultant, owned a business. I did a lot of things, but I missed that camaraderie, so I decided I was going to be a volunteer firefighter, which filled a little bit of that void. But then September 11th happened, and I remember where I was that day. I remember sitting in my chair, putting my right shoe on, thinking, holy crap, the World Trade Center is on fire. And as I went over to put my left shoe on, I watched the second airplane hit. And it's a powerful thing to remember back that it instantaneously, it was instant, that I thought to myself, I have to go back in the military. There was no question as to what I was going to do and where I was going to be in the next 12 to 18 months. 3 days later, I was at the recruiting office wanting to go fly helicopters and kill bad guys. They didn't need pilots. I was too old. I was 31. They said I was too old, but typical recruiter jargon. But we can try really hard to get that for you if you'll just sign up. I'm a sucker. So I did. I joined the military as an officer. I went back in. And I joined the Army because I went from the Air Force, flying high and collecting intelligence. I wanted to kick these people's asses on the ground, in their face, and be a part of change in our nation, be a part of remembering the things that Senator Birdwell did. I wanted to go be a part of rectifying that. But it took me a long time. Anyone that's been in the Army knows where Fort Irwin, California is. I got my first assignment was Fort Irwin, California, which is a training base. So the first part of my military career, I spent training 3,000 and 4,000 soldiers at a time. I went out on the battlefield as an enemy soldier, fighting against them for 17 days a month out in the field, training them to go to combat. I didn't know how valuable that training was going to be because my first assignment to go overseas, I was just an ordnance guy. I wasn't a special ops guy. I didn't have a sexy job. I ended up with 11 soldiers, including myself, so 10 other soldiers, living outside the wire with Iraqi Special Forces, a battalion of Iraqi intelligence officers and NCOs. So we had about 650 soldiers that we were training, and the closest American military base was about a 22-minute helicopter ride away. So when people tell me all the time, I went outside the wire, I just like to joke and tell them, yeah, I lived outside the wire. That training that I went through was invaluable, because every minute of every day I had to watch my back, and I had to watch the back of those other 10 members that were on my team. Because those military members we were training, I didn't know if they were good or bad. The ones I liked, secretly, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to like them. Didn't know who was good and who was bad. And you know, that went on for a year. One of the colonels we were training gave away our coordinates and then left the base and let some trucks come through, and they blew up our compound. You know, it just tells you, you are who you hang around. You got to be careful who you hang around. And you know, I said earlier, I like what I'm looking at here because I'm hanging around, I think, a whole bunch of conservative Christian Republicans in here. Am I right?
Yeah.
So, you know, the things that I learned at those training bases and the things that I've done leading up to going to Iraq made me who I was and allowed me to protect myself and the other members on my team. That brings me to coming back. Came back from Iraq, felt pretty broke. I was a little lost. I couldn't remember things. I mentioned that we got blown up over there. You know, I went into a 30-day PTSD rehab program that I put myself into. My commander is telling me, senior officer, I was a major, you know, officers don't go to that kind of stuff. Well, guess what? I do. So I got to take care of myself if I want to take care of other people. If I want to take care of my family, I have to make sure that my mind is right. So I don't regret going to it. And the reason I openly talk about it is that we have 22 veterans a day killing themselves. And I saw a whole bunch of people in this room raise their hands telling me you're veterans. So my plea to you is, if you know that you're having issues, or you know of another veteran, it could be your son, it could be your grandson, your granddaughter, ask them to get help. If they don't go get help, make them get help. Hand carry them. Take them to the place they need to be to get help. War is not pretty. And we've been in a protracted war that's lasted, 13 years now? We've got some people that have issues out there. And when I talk about issues, I'm not just talking about the current war. I'm talking about those of you that came back from Vietnam. If you need help, you got to reach out and ask for it. If you know someone that needs help, help them. You know, I got off track. I wasn't going to talk about that. But when I get into a group this big, I want to talk about those veteran suicides, because 22 a day is more than what we've lost during the whole 2 wars that we're in right now. All right. So 21 years of military service. I get a medical discharge. I almost die the year after I get out of the military. I have heart surgery. During my recovery, my wife is watching me. Has anyone ever had a long surgery recovery where you're at home and you're watching TV? Raise your hand if you've had one of those. All right, so you know that after several weeks of sitting on your butt watching TV, that you hate soap operas, you can't stand Oprah, you don't like any of those things. So I started watching Fox News, because Fox News is the only place that does true, balanced media coverage. It really is. So I'm about ready to throw the remote control at the TV, and my wife says, you know what? When you get better, why don't you go be a part of fixing that mess? And I looked at her and told her, it's so broken, I can't do that. This system is broke and nobody cares. She said, you care. Everything that you've done and everywhere you've been has brought us to where you are today. And there could be 100 more people just like you that want that change, and they can get elected too. And you can go down to Austin and you can affect change. And it resonated with me. And when I got better, I went and paid a $750 fee to go file to become the state representative in Arlington, Texas. She was pretty surprised when I came home and told her I did it. But I tell you what, we ousted a 20-year veteran in politics, 8 years as a state representative, a Democrat in Republican clothes, came claiming to be a conservative Republican, and we beat her. And her job is done at the beginning of January, and mine starts. And some of the things that I'm going to do, and I'm not going to do them alone. Senator Birdwell, we have about 20 conservative Republican House members, really hardcore conservatives, that are going to do things to make a difference. And I keep bringing up this teamwork, and I keep bringing up the camaraderie and all the things that brought me to where I am. And before I close, I'll tell you why. But before I go to why, let me tell you a couple of things that I'm getting ready to do after this meeting. I'm leaving this meeting to go meet my new chief of staff. We're going to sit down and we're going to author a few pieces of legislation and we're going to submit them. And the Democrats are going to hate State Representative Tinderholt because one of the first ones I'm doing is I'm filing legislation to force every single member in the state that receives state aid to drug test.
Yeah.
Because last time I checked, for the 21 years that I was in the military, I damn well had to drug test whenever they told me to, so I could get a paycheck and I could pay those taxes that those people are taking. So they're going to drug test too. Second, I'm going to author legislation that makes it a felony for anyone that receives state aid to sell their state aid for 50 cents, 70 on the dollar. And if you're caught doing it, now remember, I'm filing this legislation. It doesn't mean it's going to hit the floor, but I will file it every single session until it gets through. Not only will I make it a felony, I want them to never be able to get state aid again when they do that. To add to that, if you buy those state dollars, if you're a buyer, you've convicted of, you will be charged with a felony as well. There's several other pieces of legislation that have to do with education, that have to do with budget. I want a transparent budget. I'm tired of them taking money and putting it into transportation and diverting 30 and 40% of it to other stuff. I don't know, last time I checked, when you got your motorcycle payment, your house payment, or your car payment, if you set aside $500 to pay your car payment and you decide you want to take your wife out for 50 bucks, you're going to give your kids 50 to go play football, go to the football game, and you end up with $400 at the end of the month, they're coming to take your dang motorcycle or your car, right? Well, why do we allow our legislators to do the same thing? If we decide, if we prioritize infrastructure and then we fund it, we cannot divert those funds to other things because I don't get to do it at home. You don't get to do it at home. These are your tax dollars, not the legislators. It's not their money. It's yours. And we owe it to you to be as good and fiscally responsibility with those dollars as you are with yours at home. We owe that to you. Something that I always tell people every time I stand up, and Mel Moss has heard me say this over and over and over. I am a public servant. I serve the people of Arlington, Dalworthington Gardens, and Pantego. I get nothing but satisfaction from the seat that I'm going to be sitting in. I work for them. I am not coming down to Austin in January to make lobbyists happy and make friends with legislators. My job is to support the people that pay the taxes and do the things they want me to do. So when I come down to Austin, I'm not coming to make friends. If people aren't doing the fiscally Christian, conservative, Republican thing, I got nothing for them. Nothing, except a no vote. I will do everything in my power to pass conservative Christian legislation. Every single time a piece of legislation in Texas comes across my desk, I will look at three things. Is it the Christian thing to do? Does it meet the requirements of the U.S. Constitution and the amendments? Does it meet the requirements of the Texas Constitution? And if my staff tells me no to any of those, my vote is automatically a no, no matter how good that piece of legislation could be for the people. Because we owe it to you. We owe it to the taxpayers and the voters to do what's constitutionally and Christianly correct. We owe that to you. Now that brings me to why I keep talking about teamwork, and why I talk about being in the military, and why I became a conservative representative. I probably don't know what I really got myself into. I probably am going to be in for a bigger mess than I think, but I'm going to tackle it. And the reason I'm going to tackle it, and the reason I'm okay with it, and the reason I know I'm going to be okay, is because there's other conservatives that are coming with me. State Representative Jonathan Stickland was the most conservative House member last session with a 100% scorecard, voting conservatively every time. And he told them, I'm coming back next session and I'm bringing friends. Guess what? I'm his friend and I'm coming. And Democrats and moderate-leaning Republicans aren't going to like me, and I'm okay with that. The other piece that I have is you. You guys are organized. You guys are structured. You guys have so much experience out there. You guys have the camaraderie, the esprit de corps. You know, you probably don't look at it this way, but that is legislative power that you have. So the main reason I wanted to come and talk today, the main thing I want you to remember today isn't who I am and isn't what I'm going to go do. The one thing that I would like you to remember is that you have the power to affect change. Not individually, but as a group. As a group, you've come together here. And I'm guessing that some of the groups in here aren't the best of friends outside of here. I'm just guessing. But you know what? As a group, you have the power. The power of the people to talk, to do a mailer, to knock on people's doors, to get together like this and force your legislators to do open forums like this. Tell them what you want. Don't ask. You don't have to ask us what you want. You got to tell us. We work for you. I'm tired of legislators at the U.S. level, the federal level, and at the state level. I'm tired of them telling me what's good for me. Because if you look at the Constitution, and when they talk about inalienable rights, those are God-given rights. The government's job is to protect those rights. Democrats and left-leaning liberals want you to think that they grant you those rights and they can modify and change them. Well, I'm here to tell them, and anyone that believes that, inalienable rights are God-given rights. My job is to help protect those rights and make sure that every piece of legislation we pass meets the constitutional and Christian standard, or my vote's a no. So I ask you to do what you're doing today, to push your city council members out if they're not doing what you need. I ask you to push your school board members out and replace them if you're not happy with them. I ask you to look at the state and federal level. Come together as a group and push these people out and make them unemployed and put back the people, the power of the people, into the legislators. You have the power to do that. And the reason I know that, Mel Moss right here was the president of the Tea Party in Arlington, Texas. Everyone went along to get along for 8 years. They knew this woman was a Democrat and Republican close. Nobody did anything. They stepped up. I asked for assistance. That Tea Party, for the primary election, knocked 10,000 doors. For this last election against the Democrat, I don't know if you know, they knocked 30,000 doors in 2 months. 30,000 doors as a group. That put me over the top. I beat the Democrat because I had Republican club support and I had Tea Party support. And that's what you are. You're power. You're the people. Bring the power of the people back to the legislature and force them to do your work. Force them to be who you want them to be, and force them to be Christians and constitutionally correct when they do what they're doing. I appreciate you guys listening to me. I get on a rant. I love speaking to people because I sometimes feel like people don't know that you're in charge. It's not us. We're the servants. Does anyone have any questions of me? Someone's got to have a good question. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I just like to know what your views are on the Second Amendment right, the right, more specifically, the right to bear arms.
Okay.
There's an open carry law.
Right. Let me tell you, first of all, I carry 2 to 3 guns on me at all times. Just in case anybody doesn't like me, I also carry a couple extra magazines. Running out of ammo stinks. You know, a lot of people call it open carry, some people call it constitutional carry. My friend Jonathan Stickland just wrote a piece of legislation, submitted it Wednesday, I think, of last week, for constitutional carry in the state of Texas, and I support that piece of legislation because it's constitutionally correct. Now, let me tell you what I think that means versus what people out there are trying to make the media think it means. States that have passed constitutional carry don't normally have men and women out there carrying M4 rifles and shotguns. Can they? Yes. Do they do it? Not really. Most of us want constitutional carry because if I take my jacket off and you see the imprint of my gun, or if you see it, then I don't lose my license, right? Or that what I'm trying to get at is the average person, the average citizen is not going to open carry everywhere. It might be under their jacket. You might see it a little bit. People are scared of constitutionally correct stuff. They're scared because the media has made people think that. I support it 100%. I think it's the right thing to do. I think, like I said earlier, it's a God-given right, not a government-given right. And I vow to protect that right.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. As you know, as you submit a piece of, a bill for legislation, it goes to the calendar committee.
Yes.
Joe Strauss usually controls whoever's in charge of the calendar committee, and if it's a piece of conservative legislation, he blocks it at the calendar committee, and it never makes it to the floor for a vote. How are you going to address that?
Well, you know, that's a really good question. Number one, I'm impressed. It tells me that you know what the heck's going on in your state legislature. And if you don't know who Joe Strauss is in the Speaker of the House race, inform yourself and tell your Texas state representative who you want your state rep to vote for. I'm going to explain real quick what's going on. January 13th, I'll be sworn in as a state representative in District 94. There's 150 state reps in the House. We have to choose on January 13th, after we're sworn in, who's going to be the Speaker of the House. I'm going quickly because for some of you, you already know what's going on. The Speaker of the House essentially decides what kind of pieces of legislation hit the floor and what doesn't. Our current Speaker of the House, Joe Strauss, while he may be a very nice man, he is another Democrat hiding behind the title of conservative Republican. We had 95 Republicans and 55 Democrats in the Texas House. We have a super majority. We should be passing conservative Republican legislation, no? Right? 51% of the legislation passed last session was Democrat with 55 members. Committee chairs for all of those important committees that your money is spent on, do I have to hurry? Of all the pieces of legislation and those chair members, there are more Democrat chair members than there are Republican. The short answer is I'm voting for the only choice, Scott Turner. He is the only conservative choice for Texas. He's the conservative choice to make sure that any pieces of legislation that we put forth, like the couple that I talked about, will actually hit the floor. Joe Strauss has control of those calendar committees and can stop everything that he wants to stop and make it not come to the floor for a vote. Because of that, I'm openly, a lot of people are afraid to say it because of the power of money and the power of his position, I'm voting against Joe Strauss.
Every legislative session, Joe Strauss has people pledge on pledge cards who they'll vote for the Speaker of the House for the next legislative session. You've got to kill those pledge cards.
It's ethically incorrect for them to do pledge cards.
Absolutely.
So, we done?
Are you?
Does anyone have any other questions before I take off? Yes, sir.
You know, in our group, things like the Second Amendment are important. Quick questions, quick answers by politicians, everything gets thrown out. on the right to carry a concealed firearm in the state of Texas, which I've had since the law was initially passed. I've had a federal firearms license as well. I'm obviously a bandito. The things that concern me about my rights, as I renewed my license over time, I see a change in language in the classes about known criminal organization, gang members, things that they put in the law that make me wonder if, even though I am licensed to carry a firearm, if I should pull it out and use it. Not because of who I am, a veteran, 16 years married, 4 kids, 17-year entrepreneur, but because I ride in an organized motorcycle club, not a criminal organization. So as things progress with things like our Second Amendment right as Texans to carry a concealed firearm, they start to alienate us. Those are the things that concern me. It's the in-depth legislation. It's not just saying everybody has a right, if you legally qualify, to carry a concealed firearm or open carry your firearm. What's the fine print? That's what our legislators need to look at, because I've earned the right as a law-abiding American citizen to carry my firearm, and I should not be concerned whether or not I can draw that firearm if I had to use it.
Well, let me tell you, there's a difference between a politician and a statesman, and I think Senator Birdwell told you. As a statesman, you're honorable, you're a servant of the people, and you have no hidden motives. I'll tell you, your Second Amendment rights are no different than mine, and they're no different than the police officer that might be outside. We all have the same rights, regardless of who you are and what organization you're riding. I did not know that, and I'm glad you brought that to my attention. And it brings this to the end of this discussion, which is, that is a perfect example of why you have to talk to your legislators. We don't claim to know everything. We have to know the people that know everything, and guess who that is? It's you. I did not know that that kind of language was in there, and I've had a concealed handgun license for years.
Well, absolutely, and you're presumed innocent until proven guilty. And before I'm a bandito, I'm an American citizen. And I deserve all of those rights. I served for those rights. So you can't mix the order up.
Right.
Because of my motorcycle club, you can't take all of those rights away from me. You can no longer treat me like a second-class citizen. I'm a fucking first-class citizen.
Right on, Todd.
Hey, real quick, what was his name, Todd?
Todd.
Todd, rest assured, I heard you. I'm going to bring that down to the Texas House. I'm not going to let it lay somewhere. I'm going to put my chief of staff here after this meeting, and I'm going to have him do research and find out why that's happening. We all know it's the liberal left, and we will try to stop that kind of language and try to get rid of that kind of language.
Thank you.
I'm a lifelong conservative, and initially in my voting career, as an adult American citizen, straight Republican ticket voter. And until, and this is no motorcycle club involvement, I wasn't a bandito, I had nothing to do with Red Gold World, but I had a controller that embezzled $500,000 from my business, and that's where I quit counting. That wasn't the total damage. And my conservative prosecutor in rural Ellis County did not pursue the white-collar crime because he was an elected official, and he was concerned with wins and losses so that he could be the judge that he is today. That experience took me from straight conservative ticket to at least exploring the options. I'm a Christian man. I'm an American citizen. I'm a proud fucking bandito. But I want to know the agenda of the person before I vote for them. Informed voters are powerful.
Make their agenda your agenda. They work for you.
Trust me, there's people in this room that know me. I'm not afraid to say what's on my mind, and I always vote. I could never vote for now Judge Joe Grubbs and I couldn't find anybody else that would run against him that I was willing to put a vote in for. So I made myself a write-in candidate. I'm yet to be elected, thank God. Starts with us, everybody in this room, every American citizen that votes, being informed and making sure that our representatives and our government, first of all, like you said, their agenda is us, public service, and that they are informed. That when somebody sticks in 15,000 meal tickets and a big bill for something that has nothing to do with the title, you guys have to be informed, because they're stealing our rights.
I agree.
And they do it in the fine print.
I agree. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was sitting here listening to you now, and I know you mean well, but you understand that it's about 15 steps just to get a bill on the floor. And then to get the bill to committee. And then once you get that bill to committee, you know as well as we know, 99% never leave committee. It'll never make it out of committee. So you have any kind of special agenda to address that, because if you don't have the recognition of your constituents in there,
It's easy.
then there's no way.
It's an easy answer.
There's no way that that bill is going to ever get out of committee.
It's an easy answer. We talked about it a minute ago. I'm voting against Joe Strauss.
There you go.
Hey, thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it. Have a really, I'm going to tell you the same thing I told my soldiers when I was in the Army. Be safe. Your families need you. We need you. We need your voice to be heard. I know you guys are going to have a super fun-filled weekend, but please be safe while you're out there this weekend. Your families need you, and we need you. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Tony Tinderholt. Thank you.